and now we're kicking off. I'm gonna spotlight my video so that it's a little bit larger. Hopefully that'll aid in those that are tying along at home. I do have a 2 camera setup, so once Bob goes to the screen, I'll back off the zoomed lens here and we will do Bob's presentation. My name is Brandon Wells. I am the assistant program lead here for Healing Waters in Roanoke and Salem. I'm a Marine Corps combat veteran, 2001 to 2005. I was an 0341 mortars, and very much look forward to these sessions every week as it really helps me to get something to look forward to, see all your smiling faces, and spread a little knowledge while we're at it. If you do want to chime in, please don't hesitate. You're welcome to unmute. If you do get unruly, I will just smash that mute button and exert my power. So don't make me do that. I've only had to do it one time to Mark Colwell there. He got a little out of line once.
My bad.
Just had to have the mute button. But other than that, we've had really great couple sessions here. Kathy, what is this, like 16, 15?
It's about 15. I think it's the biggest group we have.
Fantastic. That's great. That's great news. Thank you. All right, so I've started some 6/0 thread here on my wet fly hook. I'm going with the size 12 just for illustrative purposes, but 14, 16 is typically where I tie this. Went a little bigger again so you could have a better view. I got John Ennis coming in, Kathy. So I've started my thread there about halfway back on the shank, and I'm going to run that thread all the way to the bend of the hook. There's Matt Hag coming in, Kathy.
She's asked for the hearing to be delayed, but did not defend herself during the meeting. The vote fell along.
All right, who's getting the mute button?
The resolution could reach the Senate floor by Friday.
Is that Mark? It's got to be.
It's not me.
Forecast, it was much warmer this afternoon, but some big changes are on the way for Wednesday. Frank is saying we're expecting a round of windy weather that's coming back.
That's the big weather.
Windy and warm.
Next 12 to 24 hours that gust.
We're gonna just mute some people here till we figure out who it is.
Also Carroll County and then extending down into Grayson. But everybody's going to get breezy. Those are just where the strongest wind gusts are going to be. Then we have what's called a jet stream. Basically, the jet stream is a river, very fast-moving air that moves over the region. And what happens is every once in a while, you get strong winds.
Found it.
See a couple miles of feet up, you've got winds to feed up. That's a
All right, let's try this again. Hey, Alan, you're right on time, sir. Welcome. We were having some news in the background, some local news and weather. We had to shut that down briefly, but welcome, Alan. Good to see your face, sir. All right, carrying on. I have run my thread all the way back to the bend there, and I'm going to bring it back forward. The next material we're going to tie in is a little clump of dubbing. The point of this dubbing is going to be to give our partridge or grouse, depending on your flavor, something to kind of bend around as it's in the water current. It's going to give a little more body to this fly and give us a little bit of a thorax. And so if you have some fine dubbing, now would be the time to pull that out. Kathy included some in my kit. Thank you, Kathy. Nice little blend of dubbing there. And we're going to go real light with that as usual. We just want a little bump of dubbing here. if you've been with me a little while, you know that dubbing is best rolled on in one direction. So pick a clockwise or counterclockwise and stick with it. I've found that to be the most successful means of applying dubbing to the thread. So right there where my thread started, I'm going to take this little dubbing noodle now and make a few wraps. You can say I'm still a little ways behind the hook eye there. I want lots of room both for my hackle to lay down and for the head of this fly to be finished real clean. And it's okay to leave that much space. There's no problem with that. You're going to take up that space without a doubt when you tie in the feather and add the head. Hopefully you can see that pretty well. All right, I'm going to find my hackle now, which is a nice piece of partridge. Oh, it's real quiet now, boy. All right, y'all are welcome to unmute at any time if you feel like you have something to say. I just had to shut down the news reports. All right, prepping a partridge feather or grouse. There's kind of two schools of thought. One being you pull off all the webbing and you leave that nice, only the good stuff at the top. And then you tie that in and you kind of rake the hackle back as you wrap. The other school of thought, and I kind of like it for this fly, is you actually peel off half or the bottom of the quill. That gives you a little bit more control over the buildup of the hackles as they wrap. And it also kind of lays down a little bit better. It's user preference. If you like a lot of feather kind of wrapping back as you palmer around it, palmer is probably not the right word in this case, but as you wrap that hackle, you're going to get a lot more feather laying down. So I'm gonna do it that way for this fly, and we'll have time to do it a different way tonight because I'll be tying a few as Bob is sharing his knowledge. So in this case, I'm not peeling off the bottom, and you're gonna want your partridge to basically look like this. And you're gonna tie it in at the triangle. You'll tie it in something like this. And as you can see, I have the feathers so that the bold colors are facing up. So I don't have the bottom side of the feathers facing up. I have those bold colors of the feather facing straight up. I'm going to take my bobbin and I'm going to do a few wraps there to lock in that tie-in point. So that's where you should be right now. After those few wraps, this new bobbin from Loon is starting to loosen up and it's getting a little too much give there. After those few wraps, if you're feeling brave, you can pull up on those tag ends there, get them out of the way. And now you're going to take the hackle pliers, if you have them, and you're going to start wrapping that hackle away from you. And as you do so, wet your fingers and gently, I mean gently, because that hackle will pull right out of your wraps. Gently start wrapping the hackle around as you're pulling back on the barbs. Each wrap, do a little pull back. Don't drop it, as I just did. And if you're doing it right, those hackles are pointing towards the back side of the fly. If you've got barbs that are wanting to head towards the front of your fly, you may have begun to wrap the fly in a direction that the barbs don't want to lay naturally. And you can fix that by simply changing the direction of your wraps. Notice how I'm constantly pulling those barbs backwards along the shank. And we get barbs that want to head towards the bend of the hook. Once you've gotten your 2 or 3 wraps, follow up with 2 or 3 wraps of thread over the quill there. We're definitely changing out this bobbin. And I'm going to throw a whip finish before I really put the head on, because I want to be sure that this thing does not come undone on me. There we go. All right, I'm going to get rid of my tag end of the quill there. I'm going to get rid of any wayward hackles. We'll do our head now. Just build up a nice little thread dam type situation right at the eye to give you that nice shape in the front, and then whip finish. If you do have some unruly hackles at this point, you can push that head back a little bit further into the shank of the hook, and you'll force those hackles to lay down as you put a few wraps on them. That is the Feb Red. Now, as you know, I've become a big fan of the UV resin. In this case, I'm going to use just a small amount, and I have my torch here. Hey, there's Cindy. Welcome, Cindy. Recommend not applying with the actual applicator tip that comes with. Just put a little bit on your bobbin needle, which is currently missing in action from my fly tying bench. There she is. So just put a small amount right on here, and you have a little more control. Hey, Cindy, I see you there lurking. If you find it in the eye of your hook, now's a great time to knock it out of there, because you definitely don't want to use the hardener once it's in the eye of the hook.
Hey, I'm just dialing in, listening, because I'm on the road, but thank you.
We appreciate your attendance always. Thank you.
All right, well, I'm going back mute.
Okay. Let's see.
I did stop. I wasn't doing this while I was driving.
Good. Thank you for clarifying.
But I do need to get back on the road. But I look forward to listening to both you and Bob.
Sounds good. All right, there's the UV to harden things up. So a few seconds there, locks everything in place. Great little product. And that's it. That is the February Red. Our ingredients were red thread, a little bit of dubbing, and a single solitary partridge feather or grouse, depending on your preference. Questions, let's hear them. Otherwise, we're going to go to our next item on the agenda, which is the Bob Crawshaw.
Hey, Brandon.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, hey, I love the UV resin too, and I find it a real pain in the containers it comes in.
Yes.
But I was in Ace Hardware, and they sell this little container of UV resin.
Nice.
Which is probably a thin resin.
Yeah.
With a great little, I don't know if you can see it.
I'll
tip.
Hold on. Yeah, go ahead.
That makes it real easy to control your application. And the best thing is the tip will screw off and you can refill the barrel.
Perfect. That's fantastic. Thank you. That's a good little recommendation.
That works, gives you really good control, and I had to ask, and the guy went all over the store because it wasn't in with the glue. I forget where they had it, but it's kind of advertised as repair anything stuff, but it wasn't in with their glues.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much, Matt. All right. Kathy, anything for the good of the group before we go over to Bob Crawshaw?
I think we're all ready.
All right,
Set.
sir, I'm going to share my screen, which has the PowerPoint on it, and we will go from there. One moment. How's that look right there, sir?
I lost it.
All right, it's
I got
coming up
nothing.
now. It's coming up. How about now?
Nope.
Nope. Can anyone else see the screen with a wet fly on it?
I can see it.
I've got it.
Yeah, I can see it.
Interesting.
See it well.
Oh, I got it.
Okay,
Just
there we
popped
go.
up.
You almost made me question my technological prowess there. That was a close one.
Actually, I had it the whole time. I just wanted to make you nervous.
Nice, nice, nice.
Am I warranty?
Okay. Now, you're going to have to flip the slides for me, Brandon.
I am willing to
But,
do that, sir. Take orders.
This is a wet flies presentation I gave to Trout Unlimited about 6 years ago. This is a condensed version, about 17 minutes. Next slide. You know, as Kathy said in her teaser, in the Google announcement, you know, flies hatch all year long, but the major amount of hatches occur from March all the way to June. And so here we are in mid-January. If you're going to fill your fly box with ammunition of wet flies, it's got to be now, because the peak season is coming up. So I'm going to talk about what is a wet fly, what life forms they imitate, when do you fish them, how do you fish them, and where do you fish them, and then a little bit of bibliography for those that are interested in reading more. Next slide. What is a wet fly? Well, wet flies have been around for a long time, but they were really made a move in 1910 by a guy named Gordon Edward Mackenzie Skew, a Brit who had to go and pay homage to his fly fishing club to explain why he was not fishing dry fly and still catching a lot of fish. And that really turned the corner for wet fly fishing internationally. Now, what we have here is 3 of the 8 or 9 or 10 wet fly patterns that you'll see. The one on the left is a traditional wet fly. That's an Adams wet fly. That was first created in 1497 by Dame Juliana, a British nun. The one on the bottom is, of course, the February red that Brandon just tied. That's a soft tackle. They really jumped to the forefront with Sylvester Nem's book in, I think, 1971 or so. And the one in the top right is a flimp, which was designed initially by Pete Heide in 1937 and 1941. But there's all kinds of patterns. But wet flies, next slide. Try to step with me, Brandon, okay?
Yes, sir. My apologies, sir.
What life forms do they imitate? This is really important. You know, they imitate insect activity in the top half to the top 2/3 of the water column. So it's the behavior activity associated with the last few molts, or the generational activity associated with the actual hatch. And most insects, like we talked about in the December and January sessions, inject air either into the wing pads or their exoskeleton, and they achieve that gives them lift. They let go of the rocks, and as they rise in the water column, water pressure is less, The air bubble expands, so the rise accelerates. It's this accelerated rise that we're going to achieve with wet flies. Most insects don't swim as they hatch. Air gives lift that accelerates. And they, at the same time, they're wiggling to cast off that final molten shock. You'll remember in December, we tied the CK nymph, and it had a shock on it. And unweighted CK nymphs will imitate this as well. Now, an important point here, the smaller the insect, the more get trapped in smooth water and they die. But it's still protein, and fish still eat protein. I mean, we eat dead protein, right? So, I mean, they'll still eat it. So here, the term the Scotch used was smutting, right? That gulping or sucking sound you hear when they eat. Next slide. When do you fish a brace, and what flies do you use? First of all, what's a brace? A brace is 2 or more wet flies on the same leader. At 11, my very first fly fishing experience with my 8-foot fiberglass wonder rod was 3 wet flies tied on the same leader, and that's as close as an 11-year-old can get to suicide. But that's a brace, and the Scots use a brace exclusively on the lochs in Scotland and some of the rivers, not too many, but some of the rivers, but they always have 2 flies, sometimes 3. Before you fish, though, you want to check seasonal patterns and pick and fish those patterns associated with the hatches in the months that you're fishing. Next slide. This is a Rev 5 of a hatch chart, not a hatch chart, a pattern chart. I want to say that again. This is a fly pattern chart, not a hatch chart. So if you look on the left column, you have insect orders, mayflies, caddis, and other, mainly stoneflies. But underneath mayflies, for example, you have fly patterns. And fly patterns imitate more than one insect species. Look at the hare's ear. It's good from March until July. Same with the pheasant-tail nymph, March through July. And they work in other times too, but the peak times they work is those months. And so these patterns imitate more than one insect species. So here we are approaching February. So you go over to the February column, you see quill gordon, you see winter caddis, you see black CK nymph, which we tied in December, right? And you see February reds, which which Brandon's tying tonight. And of course, egg patterns. Next slide. Now, the important thing to do is to ascertain whether the insects are in the top half to top 2/3 of the water column is to take the water temperature. If it's below 55 degrees, there's probably no generational activity going on, except for the black caddis in Virginia at 52. So if the water temperature is 45 to 55 degrees, you put on heavy nymphs and you fish the bottom. But once that water temperature gets to 55 or greater, man, that's the time to start putting on some wet flies. And if you're fishing dries to fish that are working the surface and you're getting rejections, that could be a great time to put on a brace of wet flies. Next slide. Okay, there's 5 or 6 rigs that you'll find in the literature, but the 2 most popular are the dropper rig and the tandem rig. Now, the dropper rig at the top, you have more movement, but you also have more tangles. And what is that? Well, let's say you have a 9-foot 3X leader, and you tie off your first fly to that after you tie on 18 to 24 inches of, say, 4X. And then you tie off your second fly and you tie on 18 to 24 inches of 5X. Notice we're decreasing the diameter of the tippet as we go down. And then you tie off your point fly. Your point fly is the last fly, and your leader fly is the first fly. Now, you have more movement, but you also have more tangles. And this is a bear in the wind to throw this. And you certainly don't backcast it. You have to do a river load cast or a lift cast. the second rig there is a tandem rig. And at 74 years old, that's what I use. I don't try to get fancy. You have stiffer movement with the flies, but you have less tangles, and this will cast in the wind just fine. So you have a 9-foot 3X leader, tie off the first fly, then you take 18 to 24 inches of 4X, tie it off the curve of the hook of the first fly, tie on your second fly, then take 18 to 24 inches of 5X, tie it off the curve of the second fly, and then tie on your point fly. Now, some guys like Gordon Martin, they add weight and they do great. He catches a lot of fish, but I find that weight really buggers me up. So what I do is I make my point fly really heavy if I need to get it down before I can get that accelerated rise in the water column. Next slide. How do you fish them? Well, you mix up your fly selection. By mixing them up, I mean a size 12, a size 14, and a size 16. A light colored fly, a medium colored fly, a dark colored fly. Your heaviest fly on point. Maybe a soft hackle, a flimp, and a traditional wet fly in your rig. Give them a buffet that they can look at. And when you get a couple of fish, you'll note which one is working, and maybe you could tie on more of the same pattern. Your presentation is important. The goal is to achieve depth first. So you cast and you mend so that brace of wet fly sinks, and then eventually it's going to belly up. You know, if you cast straight across the river, you'll notice that the drag starts slow and then gets really, really fast, and then slows down as it goes down straight downstream from you. Well, when it goes really, really fast, it creates an accelerated rise in that wet fly brace, which imitates the insects. You can do a quarter upstream cast or a quarter downstream cast. I'll talk about that in a bit. But as drag begins, you start twitching that rod tip intermittently to achieve a wiggle action. And if current and drag don't provide that accelerated rise, then you lift the rod parallel to the water while you twitch it. Now, you'll read a lot about the licensing ring lift in various magazine articles and recent publications, and they talk about a single cast. It's not. The licensing ring lift and James Licensing Ring and Pete Heide, 1937, 1941, developed hundreds of different approaches and tactics and techniques to achieve the accelerated lift of the insects. The licensing ring lift is not about lift, is not about a cast. It's about achieving that accelerated rise. Pete Heide was his apprentice. He was about 30 years younger. And so he lived a little longer, but he invented this strip to work. Next slide. Okay, here's a typical quarter downstream cast. Current's moving left to right. You cast to A, and then you mend to B, mend to B, mend to B to get that brace as low as you can, as deep as you can. And once drag becomes inevitable and starts to accelerate and lift that brace, you start twitching that rod tip as you move the rod tip to C. When it gets to C, which is straight downstream from you, you want to let that brace flutter for a bit. Why? Because most of the insects that are coming up in the water column to hatch, they drift into the calmer current, which is generally downstream from you. And so when your brace is straight downstream from you, it's real close to the surface. So just let it dangle there, and you'll be surprised at how many fish hit it there, because they followed it all the way through the faster water, and they see it getting closer to the surface. They're afraid they're going to lose it because it's going to hatch. Next slide. Where do you fish them? You fish them in running water. Doesn't have to be fast water, but needs to be moving, because you've got to achieve the belly of the line. There is an exception, which I'll cover. Because fish have to decide quickly in the faster water. Knee deep or deeper. You look for seams or rocks or obstructions where fish might be holding, and that's where you want to achieve this accelerated rise. You look for runs with a broken surface for the same reason. They're under the broken surface because of cover, and they'll feed on something that's rising through that surface, through that water column. And secondly, move. Your target is the aggressive fish. Don't dawdle. I have a 12 cast rule. Upstream near, downstream near. Upstream medium, downstream medium. Upstream far, downstream far. Then repeat that and then move 20 feet. You're looking for that aggressive, hungry fish. And one that will come up in the water column to eat. Now, there is a unique opportunity in long pools where you look for risers with no bubbles. This is an excellent opportunity for a brace. Next slide. Okay, forgive my ability to do graphics, but this is a long pool. The current is moving left to right. That star sort of right of center is the fish working. And you move upstream of the fish. You cast to A, way short of the fish, and you throw line out. So as you're throwing line out, that brace is sinking really deep. And as you get all the line out so that the swing will put it in front of the fish, you move your rod tip to B. And then the line will start to belly and accelerate, and that brace will come up at an accelerated rate right in front of that fish. And you'll be amazed at how many times you'll get a hit. If you can't get straight upstream, which is more than likely the case, you want to position upstream to the side, cast beyond beyond the line of the fish and upstream of the fish, and do the same kind of cast where you throw line. And next slide, please. These are the typical patterns through March through May. All moving water, February red, all your quill flies. These flies generally will hatch in overcast or even rain. And then you have medium water, you have slower water. You can see the styles are soft hackle, flip, traditional, 12 to 16 are the sizes. I tie all of my wet flies on a heavy hook. Mustad 3906 1XL or 3906B 2XL, just because it helps get the flies down. And I don't weight them unless I need a point fly like a beadhead caddis pupa, because the water's running a little full and I want to get it on the bottom so that the swing occurs. I have picks, tying instructions, and fishing instructions for a few of these patterns. So if you want to get one, send me an email and I'll shoot it to you. But YouTube's full of these. Last slide. This is sort of my favorite all-time books. Matching the Hatch by Ernie Schweibert, 1955. I got my edition in 1957. I was 11. It's dog-eared. It's coming apart. And I had 2 years of Latin before I got this book, and it's a good thing. This is all Latin. And Ernie, but that is a seminal document if you want to learn everything there is to know about aquatic entomology.
I think we all were learning Latin at 11.
What?
I said, weren't we all learning Latin at 11?
Yeah, no kidding. Then we had the Soft Hackle Fly by Sylvester Nems, probably the watershed document for soft hackles, 1975. I don't know if it's in print. Caddis Flies by Gary LaFontaine, 1981. When it was released, it was $16.95. Now I think they're going on Amazon for around $80. That is absolutely the gospel for caddis flies. And in Tying and Fishing Soft Hackle Nymphs by Alan McGee, I think Bill Boehner put me onto this one. That's a good book too. My absolute favorite though is Wet Flies by David Hughes, 1995, and it is still in print. He covers every wet fly pattern I know of. Soft hackle, flip, traditional, caddis, pupa. I mean, he covers them all. And not only that, but he tells you how to fish them all. And mostly it's with different versions of the licensing ring lift. So the time to tie wet flies is now. March to May is just around the corner. Get your thermometer, check your water temperature, and if it's above 55, put on a brace. Next slide. Any questions or comments?
Do you use wet flies in conjunction with dry flies or nymphs, or do you only set up a brace with all wet flies?
Actually, when the black caddis hatch at 52 degrees, I will put on a soft hackle, black soft hackle, and below that, as a point fly, I'll put on a black caddis, elk hair caddis, and fish it subsurface. You know, on the swing, caddis will go from the bottom of the river through 3.5, 4 feet of water in seconds to full flight. They actually swim to the surface as well as get the airlift. And so they're sprouting their wings from their wing buds as they rise through the water column. So that dry fly elk hair caddis, black, works when you fish it wet, because the elk hair will make it want to rise anyway because it's hollow. Good question.
Bob, some of us might not know what a flimp is. Can you tell us what that is?
Oh yeah, a flimp is, go to the second slide, please, Brandon. I want you to take a look at the body shape of this thing. A flimp is a combination. See the one in the top right? That's a March brown flimp. And you see that it's got some features of a March brown. It's got orange thread in the tail, but the hackle looks kind of strange. And that's because you put in the dubbing ball, just like you did on the February red, and you tie in your soft hackle, but you leave your thread at the edge of the dubbing ball, and you wrap the hackle towards the curve of the hook, and then you work your thread back through that hackle to the eye to finish off the fly. It really you can see it really creates a fuzzy look, and it looks like legs, it looks like wings, it looks like everything. It's very effective.
And with that,
Okay.
thank you, sir. We will all clap behind our screens. If we're muted, you might not hear it, but thank you.
Thank you, Bob. That was great.
Yep.
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you, Brandon.
Yeah, that was awesome. I have one more thing tonight that I want to show off. A few meetings ago, it was taken upon a few participants to bring a fly tester device into this program so that we could actually see what the flies do underwater. And I didn't quite have it ready last time we met, but this evening I'm going to give it its maiden voyage. I have it here behind me. The tank is all set up, and I have my February red in the tank, kind of ready to rock. And it's basically a curved sheet of acrylic and a little aquarium pump. And that's about it. So I'm going to switch it over to this camera briefly. I'm going to arrange for the zoomed in camera to kind of view the fly tank, and then we'll go from there. So bear with me as I get the camera set up on the fly tester, and I'll crank it up and we'll see what happens here. But I'm really grateful to those that contributed, and it's a really cool idea, and I'm really excited to try it out with the flies as we continue down this journey of tying. So, all right. So here's a bird's eye view of it. It's pretty neat. And you hang the tippet there off that loop. And currently my fly has drowned and is sitting on the bottom of the tank, but I'm gonna turn on the current here, and God willing, we'll see that fly lift up and swim along. And you kind of mess with the length of the tippet until you get a really nice ride where you want the fly to be in the water column. And maybe I'll get a waterproof GoPro and put this thing in here. I'm gonna get it off briefly. Bear with me. There we go. So there it is, kind of in the water column, riding the surface film there. You can adjust the length of the tippet, obviously, but also oh, there she goes. You can also adjust the pace of the current. And so you can really fine tune your fly and how it rides in the water. So I've always kind of wondered what it looked like underwater. And now I kind of know. So again, a big thank you to those that contributed. It's a really neat little device, and it's going to be fun to mess with and kind of perfect some designs.
The next step is going to be to put an actual fish in there, so we can actually.
Yeah.
That's a great idea, Mark.
A little fingerling in there and just see how he rocks it.
But anyway, so that's it. That's all I have for tonight. Thank everyone for tuning in. This was a banner evening. Any questions at all, please don't hesitate to chime in.
Don't forget to put it on YouTube.
Oh, we always do.
That was a great job, Brandon.
Thank you.
No, thank everybody.
Thank you,
Thanks for all
Brandon.
of you.
Thank you, Brad and Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
very
Thank you,
much.
Brandon.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, this was great.
Appreciate it.
It was a
Yeah.
great meeting. Yep, thanks.
All right.
Thanks for being here, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Hey, Ron.
Yeah.
Hey,
Hey,
man.
thanks, Bob. Appreciate the invite. Nice to see you.
Good to see you, man. Are
Yeah.
you jogging yet?
God, I don't know. Yeah, I saw this. I saw it looked like on Facebook. I saw it again as well. So it was nice to see those reviews and comments and
Yeah.
pictures and stuff like that. That was fun.
For those that you don't know, Ron is my very best friend. We were shipmates twice, and we had a fly fishing business together. Short-lived because we had to learn the difference between net and gross, but it was great fun. And he outfishes me 2-to-1 every time. Good to see you, my friend.
Yes, sir, we did.
I want to say good night, everybody.
All right, sir. Thank you again. It was great.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you,
Brandon.
everybody.